Now this is fantastic news. I can't label it up as anything else. Ollie Scarles has signed his first professional contract with West Ham, his 17th birthday on Monday, and on the same day he signed his professional deal with the club. Just got his scholarship back in the summer, which was expected, but he's going to sign that professional contract, which is a bit of a relief, to be honest with you, given these sort of sharp progress in such a short period of time as well. But why wouldn't he sign it? Why wouldn't he sign that deal with West Ham? And I'm pleased because I'm the first person to criticise the club in terms of negotiations with our youngsters in the youth team. Not so much them, it's more the ones that have got a handful of appearances for the senior squad, so they may see themselves as part of the first team or an extended squad role, if you like. But then the wages perhaps don't reflect that. Look at House and Ashby, for example, and in the past we've had Declan Rice when he was breaking through. We've obviously got Harrison Ashby at the minute as well, Ben Johnson to some extent. So there's often this little bridge that we struggle. So Ollie Scarles isn't quite there yet. He's had a little bit of a flirt with the first team, but this is why he should sign that deal. This is why it's excellent news for the club, but it's also excellent news for the player. Because David Moyes is showing Ollie Scarles, Kenny Brown is showing Ollie Scarles, actually there's a pathway for you here. You can't say that to every player in the under-21s and under-18. In fact, you can say it to hardly any player. Hardly anybody in the youth team at West Ham could you say, look, there's a place for you in that squad. You're going to get a chance under David Moyes. Very, very few. You can count them on one hand. But Ollie Scarles is definitely one of those. Since the start of the season, he's been training with the first team. 16 years old, Moyes has had him training with the first team squad. He's leapfrogged his peers that are older than him with more experience at under-21s level, or under-23s level as it was. Moyes has said, no, forget that. We're going to fast-track you into training with the first squad. Now, does that mean he's going to play for the first team? No, of course it doesn't. I know he's had an appearance in the Conference League, but it was a dead rubber. However, when else are we going to play him? We can't. This is the downfall with having such a big first team squad with loads of depth now, because to play Ollie Scarles, essentially, you've got to probably drop Emerson. The player that we've signed for 13 million, we're probably paying £80,000 a week to. I'm just guessing there. We've got to drop him in order to put in what was a 16-year-old. That's a big call for any manager, and it just doesn't happen in the Premier League in this day and age. It just does not happen. So I'm very patient for the progress of Ollie Scarles. It was good to see him in Romania. I thought he was excellent in that game. It's the first time I've seen him. But what I will say is you don't need to see a player in order to be excited about him for a youngster coming through. You're able to take the evidence, which is Moyes has got him involved in the first team, etc, etc. You're able to take that, and that to be enough for you to have hopes for a player making it in the first team at your club. Because if you were to say to me, oh, I've got really high hopes, this player who's currently in under-21s, hasn't featured for the first team, got high hopes for him, it's difficult for you to argue your case other than he's looked good at that level. That's as far as you can go. There's no other evidence. There's no evidence that Moyes rates him or he's going to get a chance in the first team. But it's the complete opposite with Ollie Scarles. And this is why I'm quite critical sometimes. I say that. I think there's people a lot more critical than me in regards to David Moyes and the progress of youngsters at West Ham. But there's also people a bit more laid back than me in the sense that, oh, they're not good enough. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think we haven't really made many mistakes with youngsters leaving West Ham. But at the same time, I think we have made some mistakes that there's players we've wanted to retain that have left. And there's also probably been some opportunities to give the youngsters a chance at the club where we haven't given them it. We've been short in a certain position in the squad. There's been a youngster there excelling at youth level, and we've opted for playing a senior player out of position rather than giving the youngster his chance. Now, I do think that while people say, well, they've left and achieved nothing, I do think, well, hang on a minute, what you're doing is disregarding the training he would have had at West Ham. You're disregarding how good a player can be playing with players at Premier League level rather than League One level. It impacts you. And you have to take my word for it. We've spoken to ex-players on this channel. We've spoken to a former under-23 manager at West Ham who have said similar things, which is if they get a chance in the first team, they stick around and they get coaching from the best coaches in the Premier League, they're going to progress. They're going to be better than what they are if they go to League One and get that coaching. But anyway, so I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm a bit like, we haven't made much mistakes, but we probably could have given one or two players more opportunities. So I can't criticise Moyes for that. And then when he does, then just ignore the fact that Ollie Scarles has actually had quite a lot of opportunity of someone his age. And like I said, I know he's only had one competitive appearance for us, but that's a lot. That is a lot for a 16-year-old. And I'm quite optimistic that we will see Ollie Scarles at West Ham in future, and he will make it in the senior squad. There's probably, if I were to ask you right now, who do you think would make it at West Ham? Who do you think currently in our under-21s and under-18s, who do you think has got a long-term future at this club? You've probably got 5 names. I'd be surprised you've got more than 5. But on there certainly is Ollie Scarles. Now, before I go any further, gentlemen, are you ready for Christmas? Is your baubles ready? I'm not talking about the ones on the tree either. I'm talking about your baubles. How's your candy cane looking? Are you looking after your chestnuts? Well, don't worry, because while Ollie Scarles has got a deal on Monday, we've got a deal for you today, which is head over to manscaped.com, the leading company in male grooming, and if you use the code HammersChat, we'll knock 20% off absolutely everything. Get your baubles looking shiny, and as you know, the Lawnmower 4 reduces all those nicks and ingrown hairs, which helps your candy cane look good ahead of Christmas as well. Also, they've got their new set, their manicure set. It's only £20 or £16 once you use the code. It comes with a nail file, it comes with nail clippers, scissors and tweezers as well, in a lovely leather pack. So if you're looking to treat yourself, look after yourself, or treat somebody else this Christmas, head over to manscaped.com. Link is in the description. Remember, use the code HammersChat and you'll save yourself 20%. But from male grooming, from shaving your pubes this Christmas, back to talking about Ollie Scarles. But yes, the news came out last night and I was absolutely delighted with it, because I thought, well, that's a relief, because I've been critical of the club when it comes to contract negotiations with maybe not people in the under-18s and under-21s, but those that are trying to get into the first team, those that have got more appearances than what Scarles has got in the first team. I feel we often struggle with those negotiations. Declan Rice, Ben Johnson, Dan Kemp, Harrison Ashby, Sonny Perkins, where perhaps they think, hang on, I'm part of that extended first team now, but the contract doesn't necessarily reflect that in their eyes. Our contract is, well, no, you're an under-21s player, and they're probably thinking, oh, hang on, I'm not. I'm part of the first team now. I might be the 25th member of the first team, but I'm still part of the first team. And we often struggle with that. So to get Scarles to sign up, and Callum Marshall. Last month, Callum Marshall, when I said you have 5 players, Callum Marshall was on there, wasn't he? I'm guessing. I'm guessing you've got Scarles, you've got Marshall, and then the other 3 will differ between people. Ekwa would be on mine, if I'm honest with you. Mubama will probably be on a lot of people's after what we've seen in pre-season. In fact, he's been involved in the squad a little bit as well. And the 5th one, it'll differ. Loads of people have loads of different names on there. But Callum Marshall, certainly, since we've signed him back in January now, just nearly a year ago, he's absolutely ripped it up. Came in, smashed it for the under-18s, got put into the under-23s last season pretty quickly, held his own in there. This season, predominantly been in the under-21s, scoring goals, and you know, it's not unusual when you see the youth team have scored 3 goals and you think Marshall's got a couple here, and sometimes he's got a hat-trick. He's got quite a few hat-tricks for West Ham as well. So last month he signed a professional contract over West Ham. This month it's Ollie Scarles, and this is really, really good news, because like I said, with the under-21s and under-18s, it's hard to sort of justify them staying at West Ham. It's hard to say you've got a future at West Ham. There's not much evidence. But in the way of Scarles, there is. Moyes is showing him, I'll take him into the first team. I'll let him train with the first team. And this is good news. This leads on to Harrison Ashby though. Harrison Ashby is set to join Newcastle United. And I've always had a little bit of sympathy with Moyes when it comes to him, because I feel like whenever there has been an opportunity to put Ashby into the team, there's been injuries, there's been COVID, there's something happened which has stopped Ashby getting his game time, and it's just unlucky. It has been unlucky. And then when the next game comes round, either our senior right back's available, or so on and so forth, or Ashby himself is injured, something's happened just to stop Ashby getting more game time. And it's hard to wonder, if Ashby had more game time at West Ham, would he be sticking around? Would he sign that contract that we've been offering him? Because it looks like he's joining Newcastle United, but would he stick around? And I'd like to think he would. I'd like to think it is a footballing decision, and right now he's possibly disappointed at his lack of game time, that he wants more time on the pitch, and he feels he's more likely to get at St James's Park. And like I said, you can't underestimate the influence of people. Declan Rice is proof to this. Declan Rice has spoken whilst on England duty. Now, whether you agree with that or not, it doesn't matter. There's a video coming out tonight, actually. Myself and Gonzo did a podcast with Nick from Claret and Booze. A completely different video of what we've ever done. So this World Cup break, we're trying to collaborate with some West Ham content creators on this channel. So we've already done it. We had Gatesy and Duke on recently as well, and we had Luke from the Three Hammers was the first one. So this one is completely different. Nick is actually hosting video, so it's quite a long one. It's a big West Ham type podcast. It's all West Ham content. It's over an hour long, but Nick's in charge of the subjects. He's in charge of the questions. Myself and Gonzo didn't know what he was going to ask. We came on, started recording, I did a little intro, handed it to Nick, and we speak about big topics about the ownership, the managers, and Declan Rice is one of them, and the comments from Declan Rice is one of them. So you hear what we think in detail later on this evening if you tune in. It's a good video, if I do say so myself. But what Declan Rice said while away with England was, I'm playing with people around me here that are playing Champions League football. My friends here are playing Champions League football. We all know that happens. We all know the influence happens. Slaven Bilic spoke about it with Dimitri Payet. Now, obviously this was prior to the fallout or whatever, but Dimitri Payet went away with France, and he was playing with players, obviously, that were winning titles, that were playing Champions League regularly, and he was at West Ham. So it was a case of, well, we're going to have to almost give him a lot of money to make up for the lack of Champions League football. So being influenced by others is a thing. Hassan Ashby is good friends, as I understand it, with Elliot Anderson at Newcastle United. Similar ages, in the Scotland setup together. And Elliot Anderson has broke through at Newcastle this season. I think he'll go on to be a top player. Come back to this in 4 years' time if you like. But I'm going to say Elliot Anderson will be a very good Premier League midfielder. But I'm not saying that is why he's going to Newcastle. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a bit of influence there where his friend is saying, look, I'm getting minutes at Newcastle. How many of you got West Ham? Well, I've got more than you at St James's Park. We need a right back. We've got trips there, but apart from that, we're quite scarce. There's not many players there. There's an opportunity for you. So if he does go to Newcastle, I don't necessarily blame him. I don't. I find it hard to have any resentment towards Harrison Ashby. With one or two of the other youngsters in the past, I do feel they've been quite quick to jump board. But with Ashby, I feel like he's stuck around long enough to wait and see if he's going to get a chance at West Ham. And his conclusion's no, and it's difficult to argue with that. Even that game that Scarles started, Ashby didn't start that fixture. And like I said, it's rock and hard place for Moyes, because why would he give minutes to a youngster he feels is going to leave? But then you've got to give minutes to the youngster, otherwise he is going to leave. So it's a very difficult thing. But this is where Ollie Scarles' situation at present is completely different, because there isn't that expectation. He is not of the age where he must be getting minutes to convince him there's a future for him at West Ham. We've got time on our hands with him. But unlike Ashby, where perhaps Moyes, in the last 2.5 years, he could have done more. 3 years now Moyes has been here. He could have done more with Ashby. But there's an element of me that likes to think maybe if Moyes was here for a bit longer, Ashby would have been in the first team a little bit quicker and then would have had more minutes and would have stayed. But anyway, he's got that opportunity with Scarles, and I guess Scarles is going to provide the evidence as to what really happened with Harrison Ashby to some extent, because if we don't see him in the first team very much for the next 3-4 years, then you've got to say, well, it's down to the manager, isn't it? And I know a lot of people will be watching this thinking, yeah, but doesn't mean the manager will be here in 3-4. Correct, it doesn't mean the manager's going to be here, but Moyes has to, and this is my biggest problem with. It's not my biggest one, that's a lie, but it's one of my major gripes with Premier League football. Premier League football for managers is so short term. The average lifespan of a Premier League manager is just over 1.5 years. It's not long at all. So why would a Premier League manager, and I've always said this, why would a Premier League manager give minutes to a youngster so that the next one, or even the one after that, benefits. David Moyes has been quite fortunate in his career that he's had 2 world-class players for free. He has. Wayne Rooney, Declan Rice, 2 world-class players for free. He's not had to buy them, he's not had to go out and scout them, he's not had to get them settled into the club. They've already been settled in. They're free, etc, etc. You know what I'm saying. Moyes has been very fortunate. It's not often a manager gets 1 world-class player, but to get 2, and such almost generational talents as well. Wayne Rooney is one of the best players I've ever seen. Declan Rice is one of the best players I've ever seen at West Ham. And Moyes has been fortunate to have them, not at their prime, not at their peaks of their career or anything like that, but both of them playing seriously good levels at their club that would cost tens of millions to have a player of that ability in that team. And you've got to get it right as well. But David Moyes needed Slaven Bilic and Manuel Pellegrini to benefit from Declan Rice today. Moyes himself has said that Pellegrini was the one that moved him into centre midfield. He wouldn't have done that. Had Moyes not left and we didn't have a Pellegrini era, Declan Rice would possibly be a centre-back today. Now, he might actually have been a better centre-back than centre midfield. The point is, Moyes needed Bilic to give Rice his debut, and then he needed Pellegrini to mould him, and Moyes has benefited today. And I just hope that when Moyes leaves, he leaves behind at least one player that he's brought through from the academy, because currently there isn't any. Ben Johnson came through under Manuel Pellegrini. Pellegrini was the one that gave Johnson his debut. Bilic was the one that gave Rice his debut. There's no youngster in the first team at West Ham today that came under David Moyes. And Moyes has been here for three calendar years now. That is a long time in football. That's double the lifespan of your average Premier League manager. That's long enough to see a player break through in the first team and stay in the first team. We've not got that under David Moyes. And this is where I go back to the start of the video and say this is where I can be critical of him. And I know people will say, well, who is there? But I've already given my reasons for thinking there could have been 1 or 2. Could Sonny Perkins have been that player? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But if he comes through at Leeds and does well, then the answer would be yeah, it could have been him. But Ollie Scarles is certainly a player with potential to be that person under David Moyes. Obviously, it depends how long Moyes is here for. But even if Moyes goes tomorrow, and in 2, 3, 4 years' time, Scarles makes it into the first team at West Ham, he's our first choice left back, first choice left wing back, whatever the case may be, David Moyes will be the one that gave him his debut, because at the minute he doesn't have that to his name. And does he need it? Well, I think so. For a club that prides itself on the academy of football, I think you've got to have a route into the first team. And I think there's got to be a pathway. There's got to be an inspiration for the next generation of youngsters that's coming through behind Ollie Scarles at West Ham to say, do you know what? Look at Ollie. Ollie's in the first team. I want a bit of that. And the only way you're going to do that is by giving them minutes. And the only way you can do that is by investing in their future. But certainly with Callum Marshall and Ollie Scarles, we've got 2 massive prospects, 2 players with huge potential signing professional contracts in the last month of each other. And that is excellent, excellent news for West Ham United. And do you know what? I cannot wait to see how they get on. But anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, please do drop a like on it, subscribe if you're new around here. Myself, Gonzo, and Nick, we'll catch you tonight. 5 o'clock the video goes live. We'll catch you tonight.